Outside of the display case, I guess kind of the idea is that with the trophies in the way, you can see this one. Um, if you went through the process of casting, um, I would say it's better off to say ahead of time that you can see most of what it says, but you have to get into the display case to kind of move some trophies so you can see the full like wording on this placard. I think that makes more sense than to potentially have you use a spell slot and then tell you that you can't read it.
Gotcha. Okay. And if I recall from watching the video, there's like some sort of force field that's preventing, like, you can't physically open the case, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much they played with it. I didn't actually do like my own personal like look at the final few moments. But that sounds like I already kind of described it. But yeah, the idea is this case is kind of sealed from the outside, and there's a way to get into it. You just don't quite yet know.
Right. And these orbs of like colored light, do they look like is there anything corporeal about them, like any actual material, or do they look mostly just like kind of like concentrated balls of light?
I think all of the evocation tower would kind of, from your perspective, almost look like the font of light that precedes like a fireball explosion. Not necessarily that these should be perceived as a threat, but I would say like they're not uh, corporeal.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay.
But again, kind of a throwback to all of these points of lights are almost like spells in suspension kind of thing.
Right, right.
And then as far as things go, I think it might be kind of a side thing to have kind of had when you stepped into this room. There's a portrait of the High Evoker Zadulis on that kind of left side of the room. And when you stepped into the room, you almost hear coming from that portrait the words, Zadulis, you handsome devil. Where's your trophy? The next big tournament is in 667 days ago. Better head down to the Chain Lightning Stadium and bring it home where it belongs. And just to be clear, that's probably your clue for how you get into the trophy case.
Yeah, so yeah, hearing that, Brannick is thinking, yeah, maybe if we go down to that Chain Lightning Stadium, and he's thinking of the because he'd actually got an old ticket stub from that he I think that he picked up from the trash back in the caves, where that kind of like interplanar garbage dump was. Um, yeah, so he'd suggest to defend. We may need to head there and see if we can find this trophy and make out the precise wording on that plaque. And I have a feeling the sort of ritual precision is important.
So you all can head out of the tower here. I think another point that, again, should probably be kind of reminded in the recap is um, Ben took the time at the start of last session to recognize that you guys are in mortal peril in this place. You've got, I think, now two members of your party pretty much look entirely like Nothics. They're still acting normal. Yeah, Ged and Dorian almost look entirely like Nothics at this point. Those single-eyed creatures with almost like scaly, slimy flesh. You guys are in danger of losing your humanity or like your humanoid nature in this place. And that was one of the things that Fen brought up, that you have this weird combination of um, like a certain level of urgency, but also a certain level of mortality that's kind of like coming down upon you all.
Yeah, Don, when they mentioned that, and I was watching the recap last week, I was like, why did can't believe I didn't think of that like earlier. But it also makes Brannick wonder, like, okay, so the Nothics that we've seen, like, who did they used to be? This same process happened to them, and they didn't start out as those creatures.
Yeah, I think we got so wrapped up in the touristy aspect of where we were that we kind of lost sight of what was going on.
So when you go down one level from the trophy room, do you continue down the stairs that are along that side? Or do you, I think the first time you all crossed that third flight and went down to where these are, to where the stairs went up to the trophy room. Do you continue down the same staircase this time and go all the way to the base of this tower? Or do you follow through the same way that you came up?
Would be worth taking the other set of stairs.
Yeah, agreed.
Gotcha. Do you there's other rooms in these towers. I feel like maybe I've done a poor job of always describing that there's a lot more to these towers than necessarily is like the particular things of interest. When you're going through the tower on this path, do you take some time to search through some of those other rooms?
Brannick would be curious. He'd be almost looking for either like perhaps like a small library or a study. Because now that Fenn's kind of put the idea, like, okay, you know this effect is kind of, we need to deal with it. Um, he's wondering, like, is it just a matter of, we need to, the longer we stay, or is there some way to counteract it, or perhaps, blunt or delay its progression, or so that would be kind of the thing he'd be curious about if we wanted to take the time. But obviously, with time as a factor, if Fen is more interested in just kind of, trying to get what we need as quickly as we can so we can leave, that would also work for Brennick.
Yeah, I mean, I have no objections to searching slightly, but I think we need to address the situation, otherwise it's not going to end well.
Can you make an Arcana check for me, Brennick?
Sure.
So, while there's certainly reasons and ways to understand that the Netheries were capable of greater magics and different forms of magic, there's also certainly an understanding that when this place crashed, magic was already failing, that something would have caused it. And perhaps this is less something about Arcana and the arcane and more of kind of along like the lines of like diseases almost. So I think it's enough, like even though it's technically a 3, I think your Arcana is high enough to recognize that this isn't really something that is like proper use of magic. And that's where you almost start to fall into the line of um, divine magic. not necessarily somebody who's doing something with their own power, but sort of calling upon a god to almost modify things from there. Because I feel like sometimes, like, healing is almost returning the flesh to its natural state more than that, like, a cleric is trying to make you healthy. They're returning you to a healthy state. So I feel like there's kind of a little bit of room to recognize, like, this is where your magic fails, is a place like this where magic is not doing what it's supposed to do.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So with that sort of understanding and kind of knowing what he doesn't know, knowing it's kind of beyond his ken, he will, um, yeah, he will be less inclined to kind of take detours to search and kind of agree with Fen that we should really just probably just need to focus on our task at hand. Because he obviously is a wizard, he's uh pretty attached to his mind, so he doesn't want to. So far, he's hasn't suffered any ill effects, but he certainly doesn't want to uh, take any greater risk in that area than he has to.
That was another thing too. Like I kind of explained out of character. Um, Part of expanding the towers was I kind of like doubled the length of how this plays out, so it's effectively 6 fails. Is the real dangerous thing, but like, what is it? It's Ged and Dorian who are each 3 fails in. Right now, they have only expressed physical symptoms. As they go beyond this, is where mental symptoms are going to start to happen. And part of that expansion was because before it was like walk around and you just have to go to the tower to find the solution. So I wanted to expand it so it's not necessarily the same. I don't know. It plays a little bit differently here to accommodate the fact that you guys are not necessarily moving, um, able to move as fast as it was originally written. But let's still have you guys do an investigation as you go through those 3 floors. You don't have to be fully turned off from the idea of searching through these places. They are still towers of power. I don't think they're any less interesting to the two of you. My bad, that might not have come up. Can I get a D4 from each of you? Brennick, we're going to add +1 to yours. Alrighty. Can you each roll a D100 for each of those? So 3 from Fen and 4 from Brennick. This might take me a few moments, but give me a moment.
Sure.
Can you roll 2D4, Brennick? Don, can you roll a D4? Uh, I will explain this shortly while I'm cracking up laughing here. Alrighty. So I'm kind of getting over putting magical items in the world for how often they are effectively avoided, and kind of left behind. Because I think even in this place, you guys have kind of left magical objects behind, as if you didn't recognize that they were magical. So I'm not going to describe these things as mundane objects and allow you to figure out what they are. I'm going to tell you what they are for now on, because I actually want you guys using some of this stuff instead of just ignoring them. During your search,
Wait, you mean the treasure that Felixus somehow managed to miss?
oh yeah, on many occasions, when something like Detect Magic has been cast, you're around entirely mundane things. And then when I describe something that sounds mundane and would have no reason to describe it unless it were magical, everybody just walks away from it. And I'm like, there's 3 magical items sitting right behind you, and you're walking on like there's nothing. It's one of those things where it just kind of blows my mind. I can't remember what they were in particular last week, but I feel like I don't remember who it was from the two of you, but I remember last week describing a silk bag and like basically the object inside of it, and it just got, as far as I know, left behind. That magical item is just gone to time, basically. And I feel like I had like 3 magical items like in that one little find that just got ignored. So in these kind of searches, and it's basically like a half hour. So instead of walking directly down these flights of stairs, you take a few moments to kind of go through things. And there's still plenty of signs that the tower has been like shuttered in earthquakes and kind of slammed against the side of this glacier. So there's plenty of like haphazard things that you're like digging through shelves and whatnot. But between the two of you, you're going to find quite a few different things of interest. Um, like Brennick, you've got probably like 2 different like ornate kind of wooden cases that you would find. Each of them seems to have about 5 or 6 items of interest inside of them. One of which is going to have 5 potions. All of them are slightly different colors and kind of consistency to them. But one will be kind of like a clear liquid with almost like silver speckles inside of it. That is a potion of invisibility. One of them is kind of like a almost slime green or lime green sort of color with little specks of like reddish pink flesh that seems to be suspended inside of it. That is a potion of giant strength. Um, Another one is almost like a kind of orange yellow potion with little specks of red inside of it. That is a potion of fire breathing. And then there is another which is kind of like oscillating between colors. It'll be blue and yellow and red and green. That's a potion of resistance. And then the final potion, I think it's a potion. I could be wrong. I think it's actually, this one would be a like solve. I'm pretty sure periapt of wound closure. I think that's a solve, like something you almost like rub on your wound. But you should be able to kind of find those things in D&D Beyond. Those are all normal magical items. The other case has a single like pearl that sits inside of it next to 5 other potions. All of those potions seem to be the same kind of like reddish flowing color. Those are all healing potions. 4 of them are normal healing potions. 1 of them is a greater healing potion. Don, you are finding a mithril suit of heavy armor, in particular plate armor. You can find a helm, which is actually useful for you if you would like to wear it. Is a helm of telepathy. And then there is a staff as well, which is a staff of healing.
Yeah, so Brennick will definitely be interested in those in the potions, and apparently I looked it up, but a periapt is like a bracelet, almost like a charm. So it's kind of like sounds like a piece of jewelry. Actually, I thought it was like a
I was vaguely thinking that, but
yeah,
almost like a brooch.
Yeah. So I think he would kind of wrap that around his neck. Um, he would I think he would offer Fen the potion of fire breathing. Uh, Split up the potions of healing. So Brennick has a couple already. So he might keep. Uh, well, actually, no. He'll give Fen the greater because he's more often in like the thick of things, and he's can get around quicker. And then maybe Brennick will keep two of the regulars and give Fen the other two.
And I suppose Ken, I forget what Rashad's new character's name. What was her name? Galadria? Galen?
Galeria.
Galeria. I guess she could take the staff of healing. And can she wear the mithril plate armor?
I have a feeling that's where things will go with those. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I can't use it. I guess I'll keep the helm of telepathy.
I think I have them all inside of your actual party loot list. If once you guys actually get those set, you want to delete them, that would be good.
One question on the potion of giant strength. Is it hill giant?
I have a feeling I'm probably just gonna have you all roll when it comes time for that to happen. Um, one of the reasons I started laughing is that on like my table that I created, one of the things that you rolled was a greater healing potion, a D4 healing potions, and a D4 potions. But I never actually delineated what potions they would be. So that's just me rambling off four potions that I think would be interesting and potentially like used. Um, it's just kind of the classic, like, I don't want to give you guys stuff that you take and then forget, which I see, like the potions of resistances that you guys found in the tower previously, they're still sitting on the note list. Oh, wait, those are my notes. So on some level, you guys have those like resistance potions sitting on characters, like being unused. But I think, yeah, once you guys go to use it, um, I'll probably have you roll to see which then. Um, if you've got to make it custom right now, I think the solution would be call it Hill Giant.
I just added a custom item potion of giant strength.
Yeah, I feel like it's more interesting to chug it and then find out what it actually does then, just to essentially recognize like it's going to make you strong regardless. The question is when it comes time to use it, how strong do you become?
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of potions of resistance, so I still have a potion of cold resistance in my inventory. I'm gonna give that to Fen. Um because I have
Because you're actually cold resistant now.
yeah, because I'm carrying the Kata seal. I don't know why I didn't do it earlier. I kind of forgot I was carrying it. So Fen, you can add a potion of cold resistance and I'll take it off my inventory.
That was kind of my point. Is I feel like this group, there's few groups that have as much magic as like what I've started giving to you guys. Because once you actually get here, I think that's where this campaign is no longer like lacking in magical items, but you guys still haven't been using them. It's kind of the same problem I have with inspiration. I'm even tempted at this point to keep everybody with like the inspiration everybody has, but turn it into just back into the normal advantageous inspiration to see if when you guys have inspiration in the teens, do you actually use it?
Yeah, it's the hoarder mentality.
Exactly. At some point, the campaign's going to end, and if you've got 13, 16 hoarded, what purpose does it serve?
Yeah,
But
I've always been like that. I just, yeah, I don't know.
it plays out both ways. It's really easy to do. I feel like, at least for me, that was always some of my favorite stuff to do was use expendables. But I'm perfectly happy being suboptimal with my characters. So when a fight seems remotely interesting, that's when I would do stuff like that. Um, and it tends to make stuff more interesting, but then you've got to wonder, did I use that too soon? But yeah, that kind of covers you guys kind of going down and through some of these other rooms. I feel like it makes a lot more sense for Brennick to find his in like two pretty similar locations in two pretty similar wooden cases. I feel like in the long run, with what Fen found, maybe like the helm and the staff are in one place, but the actual armor itself, I feel like that's kind of the thing where like you almost see signs like this armor kind of like was flung into this area, and maybe, I don't know, for what it's worth, might have come from a different location in the city. But eventually, when you all return to the lowest level of the tower, you are going to see a similar room, only this time there are a bunch of little. I can't do this while I'm holding Alt. A bunch of little gooey blobs that are inside of this room. So the exit of this tower is now across this room from you. One of the things, I don't have Brannick dropped right now, but if you drop yourself near Fen, one of the things that Fen discovered last time, and I'm not sure how much you kept up on it, was that the central post in this area has an electrical charge that kind of reaches out about 5 or 10 feet. So it seems to block off that like way across this path. And there are walls of force that cross the actual like stadium seating on each side of this room. So when you guys come down, um, there's these creatures that are blocking it, as well as like the architecture itself is blocking your way out of this place. Um, don't necessarily have to have one immediately in combat with you guys there, but what thought do you have as you kind of like come down here and you can now see like all of the ice that was covering the floor of this room is completely gone, and there's these like amorphous blobs that seem to be kind of moving, and occasionally you can kind of see as like a little pseudopod kind of like reaches out towards one of the lights that are like glowing in the sky like above them, and you can kind of see that this thing's like almost reaching towards the fire.
Triggered something.
When you had come in here the first time, the lights were kind of like flickering and almost dim. And when someone stepped into this hall for the first time, those little motes of fire, like the things I described, like they were almost like the fireball, where it like starts that little singular point. Those went from almost like oscillating and like being unsteady to just like solidly held in place, and they started to glow brighter and brighter. But on some level, like you can kind of understand perhaps the like ambient heat of this room turning on with your presence has melted these things that were frozen to the floor. Do you have any thought on how you would cross out of this place? Would you just kind of head back up the stairs and move back around?
Um,
Try to make a
yeah,
break along one wall or the other?
yeah. Brannick would probably suggest we try the going back the way we came and see if we can get around the other side.
I don't know. Did we lose Don?
Agreed. No, I'm here.
All right, word. So yeah, I mean, if you guys expend a little bit more time, you can indeed avoid these. I don't think there's any reason for me to railroad you guys into dealing with these things. So with a little bit of kind of like the foresight that you kind of do need to cross over those staircases and come down the northern staircase. Um, as far as things go, just kind of like moving past one of them. Yeah, I feel like just as you guys kind of cross over one of the stairs, one will kind of reach out, but I don't think a 14 hits either of you. And you can just kind of pass through and away from the Tower of Evocation. So you have a solid idea that the Tower of Evocation is going to require you guys uh, basically like play a game of Chain Lightning at the stadium. The Tower of Illusion kind of requires you go to the Silk House. You've not been to the Transmutation, and you got kind of thwarted from going to the Abjuration. But you have kind of Necromancy is nearby. Transmutation is probably about as close. And then Divination is off in the north. But does it sound like you would continue towards like Necromancy and the House of Silk?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah. I would say maybe go try and find the House of Silk first. Then we could kind of honor if we're then going to be going to um, back to the Tower of Illusion. We can try and hit the Tower of Necromancy on the way. Or do you want to go try and go to that tower first then?
I don't think it really matters. Do you have any ideas about what we can do to stop this transmorgification from going on?
I don't. Unfortunately, it may be something beyond my understanding of arcane arts. May not even be arcane in origin at all. The spell plague, who knows what unleashed.
Could it possibly be related to transmutation?
Simply seems possible, but couldn't say for sure.
Can I actually have you two both make perception checks, please? Ooh, that's a tough one. Fen, when you leave the evocation tower, what kind of things are you thinking about? Are you just thinking like necromancy is ahead of us, House of Silk is over there, and we've got to deal with this sickness? That sounds to me where you're at.
Yeah, but I think the more and more I think about it, the more I put sickness to the front.
Gotcha. So one thing to keep in mind is part of what I was trying to describe is this is probably something for Holy Magic to solve. And Rashad is playing now. Galeria is a Hobgoblin Cleric Paladin. Theoretically, what's going on is something that Galeria can actually be the solution to.
Okay, like a remove curse or something like that.
Effectively, um, greater restoration tends to be the thing that can solve pretty much all problems. It has a actual cost to casting it that might be a little bit more questionable, but in the long run, um, I think there's gems aplenty to be kind of written into this city, where that's probably not necessarily going to be a high cost. And then potentially the normal um, restoration. What is it? The lesser restoration
Yeah.
can potentially do things. Although realistically, he's not touched even lesser restoration. So I think the real question is when will he actually think along those lines? Um, but that's one of those things that I was trying to get at is that it's a little bit more for divine magic to cure these issues.
Well, in that case, then yeah, let's head out to the Silk House and we can check the Necromancy Tower after that.
Yeah, that sounds good to Braddock.
Yeah, like had he not created a cleric paladin, I feel like it would be far more pressing and questionable how you guys proceed. So yeah, moving to the Necromancy Tower. I think one of the main ways the description has to change on this is that the tower isn't collapsed. So maybe it's one of those things where how like most of these are almost like two kind of feet that almost extend out, and then one of them becomes like the central spine that grows up. Maybe the Necromancy Tower has a portion of it that's kind of like knocked out, so it's almost like precariously balancing, but still otherwise standing, instead of being kind of like crushed and fallen. You guys can still see like that eerie green glow of the actual necromancy sign from when you scouted it the first time. You can see the same way that there's almost thousands of hands that are like inside of the black stone, and they all seem to just be kind of moving right beyond the like plane of the actual stonework. And last time you saw that, like, as you started to almost like work around the tower, those hands started to become more and more corporeal before they actually started part of the digging process with you. But as you kind of approach this tower, you'll kind of see those same signs. But there is a single door that kind of remains on the inside of where the arch is kind of taken out from that second leg having collapsed, where the other door kind of entering would be. So there's basically only one staircase that you can enter into the Necromancy Tower in. Does somebody go up to the door and try it?
So I think our idea was to try and find the House of Silk first, and then
Oh, my
go
apologies.
back to the tower.
My
We would
apologies. I
probably,
thought.
we would probably like kind of scout it out on the way, so like at least kind of see the door and stuff. But I think our idea is to maybe kind of come back to this after this House of Silk if we can.
Gotcha. I thought Don convinced you to go to the Necromancy Tower instead of maybe the opposite way. So yeah, when you guys go, it's probably what is that, like 100 feet beyond to the House of Silk. When you enter that little like egg part of the city and you pass by this area, you're still kind of just vaguely understanding where this place was. I think we kind of played it as you guys recognize that there was indeed like a shop that kind of had silks along kind of the like sale portion of that storefront. The way these are almost like Romanesque kind of apartments where they have like a venue for selling and then a venue inside for living. This place is kind of a large version of that, but you can see that this building is almost entirely dedicated to these silks. As you come up from the south, you're going to see that still all of their windows are kind of draped with silks, and many of the doors have like say 4 or 6 silks across them, so not like beaded entries, but like the silk kind of covers these entries in a very similar way where you almost like flow through the actual silk to enter these places. But while you guys are entering, can I have each of you roll a perception check here? So while you're entering or getting closer to this place, you can actually see that if there's like 6 silks across the doorway, those 6 silks are all almost like magically connected in that you can see like scenes and like the little bit of like flowing movement that exists. Like there's little airflows still kind of happening here. Occasionally, kind of like pick up the silks, and you can kind of see like that little bit of movement creates like a little bit of movement in the scene. But you can kind of see like visions of humanoids who are like fighting giants, or somewhere there's a dragon kind of reaching down to breathe fire over a mage who's like shielding themselves from the fire. Some of them depict these almost like scorpion like creatures that seem to be like flowing towards the mages, and their tails almost kind of extend up over their head, and you can see as the tail like strikes forward. But these silks kind of depict like living scenes, almost recorded into the fabrics.
So Brannick is going to they seem interesting, so he's going to kind of like run his hands over them and try to is he able to tell how they seem to be connected to the like the doorway? Like if he kind of like tugged on one of these silks, would it like unfurl or
Connected to the doorway. Feel like the simple solution might be to say that there's just um like a rod across the top. But I feel like it would be more interesting to say these seem to simply be. There's a magical connection between these things held at the top of these doorways and like however they hang. So like sticking your head inside, can't really see like anything up there except for that the silk just seems to be kind of flowing away from the stone. But when you do approach, you are going to hear inside of your head, "Please do not tug on the merchandise. Any theft will be prosecuted immediately." And when you go to look around, you'll see that there are. Would you roll the 16? There's at least 5 or 6 humanoids that you can kind of see. These are things that you all have seen previously, where they're almost like a pale, kind of bluish almost like teal, like the ocean flesh. And these humanoids almost like stand in these alcoves, still on like the outer edges of the building itself, but within the actual silks. So again, like the idea that there's like an outer area for like commerce, these things are still in that area, but not the inner area for like living quarters.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when Brandon kind of hears the voice and looks around, he'll kind of like very quick, almost like he's been burned, almost like kind of take his hand away and like, apologies, simply admiring the merchandise. And in his head, he's thinking like if they use this kind of magic just for like commercial purposes, it's almost kind of like blowing them away. It's like they just you know the kind of power that they had just for something simple like that, or not simple, um, but yeah, he will kind of apologies. We're not we're certainly not thieves. Mm.
So you wouldn't hear an initial response. If you want, you could roll an insight check here, but I feel like the free version of regardless of what you roll is kind of a recognition that this was almost like an automated response. When you tugged on the silk, that was taken as, if you're going to steal, we're going to come after you. That kind of like that tug was like this moment where it was saying, now's not the time to become a thief. But you don't like hear like another response.
Gotcha. Okay, and that might kind of like slowly dawn on him, and he'll look back towards Fen, maybe like a little bit sheepishly, um, and then proceed, move to like go in further and wait for Fen to join him inside.
Yeah, Fen will follow.
Can I have each of you make a nature check? So as you enter into this store, there's still light coming from Mythalar. Like this whole place is pretty much always illuminated, but there is a certain level of the further away from it, the more shadows are often in between the Mythalar and where you are. So like walking into this place will increase kind of the dimness of the light that you're approaching into, but you can still see much of what's going on in this place without any problem. And there'll be points where you start to see that there are humanoids kind of all around you, and then points where you walk like a step or two further and you can see the way the light kind of like shines onto that body. It's like a crystalline figure. And then you see it shine across this body, and that one almost has like the same bluish green flesh, but a little bit more blue than green. And you're basically going to kind of come to a realization here that there's three different kinds of humanoids inside of this place. You guys can pick up those same five or six, like towards the outer edges, that are kind of the tealish green flesh. There's probably about five or six inside that are kind of like the bluish teal flesh. And then there's probably about like say 15 or so that you can kind of recognize are like crystal mannequins that are just kind of wearing robes. Um, and it wouldn't take you necessarily too long to like distinguish a lot of those, because you'll very quickly notice a lot of the mannequins are essentially just like torsos and heads, whereas all of the other like the tealish creatures, all of those are full physical beings. They're all just kind of more or less standing like in like a catatonic state. But as you take your first few steps into this place and you start to recognize like the humanoids inside of it, you're also going to gain a sense, and I think this would probably be Fen with your passive perception, that the ceiling of this place is alive with movement. And when you start to look up, you're going to notice that there are spiders all across the roof of this place. This place is not coated in spider webs, but you are going to see spiders that cover the roof or the ceiling above you. Brennick, when you notice the spiders, will be able to recognize these as phase spiders. These are an extremely magical sort of spider. Their silk is magical. Uh, and I think that can at least be somewhat of a clue to you all that perhaps these spiders are the nature of that magical silk.
Okay, and as we like step inside and seeing these spiders, do they seem to be um, reacting to our presence in any particular way?
Present, no. Like this is still just like the first few feet into this place. Um, Besides that, the spiders are kind of like in a continual kind of movement. Um, there doesn't seem to be any sign that they're being hostile. They're more or less seem to be doing whatever they've been doing and continuing to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, perhaps they're controlled by some residual magic, or really sure. But perhaps if we don't bother them, they won't bother us, Fen. Because we should get started and see if we can find any of those anything that might be able to make use of his costumes for this play.
Yeah, Thanos going to speak up and say, I know that theft is frowned upon, but is there perhaps a shopkeep that we can speak with?
Let me get a investigation from you, Fen. Uh, there's always at least one roll in every game where I have to remind myself not to ask for a roll if I don't want it to fail. Um, so I don't think you have an initial response just as you kind of call out to this. Let me have each of you roll a D100 here. So I think kind of asking around the room, just trying to hope like that you find a response. You're going to kind of fall into that silence, and you can kind of just hear the spiders overhead. I'm sure there's a certain level of uncomfortability for you guys knowing that there are spiders so close. Um, Trying to think if there's been any giant spiders in this actual campaign to really haunt you, which I feel like no. But it has got to be a big part of living in a real Dungeons and Dragons world is to recognize when there are spiders that are larger than humans, that's like one of the worst things ever. Um, so I feel like arachnophobia for everybody makes sense. So you've got like that certain level of uncomfortability, and you can start to go through this place looking for where like some of these nicer robes might be, and you can kind of see like approaching towards the back of this place as you guys kind of flow through it, and maybe Brennick stays a little bit more towards the front, and Fen kind of moves a little bit deeper into the actual store. When you get towards the back of the store, there's a little bit larger of kind of like an open area where there's not actually things being displayed or mannequins, and you can basically see that there's just a little like platform, maybe like 6 by 11, kind of egg shaped, and that there's like an array of like 7 mirrors that are all kind of focused around it. And eventually stepping on top of that platform, I guess realistically, would you step onto that platform as you're kind of walking around this place?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not sensing any danger, I don't see why not.
Gotcha. So when you step on top of this platform, there's actually going to be like a flicker of light as you see inside of the mirrors yourself and then a robed wizard, or rather a wizened humanoid, who's standing next to you wearing many of these robes. And when you go to look around, there's nobody standing next to you, but you can see this person inside of the mirror. And the moment that you see them in the mirror, the moment you step on top of this little platform, you're going to hear this voice, and it will be all throughout the room. So Brennick would hear this as well. Um, um, Silksmith Mixel. So something to the effect of, welcome to the Hall of Silk. Aren't you adorable? My name is Silksmith Mixel, and it would be a pleasure to. Your clothing is so drab. It would be a pleasure to clothe you. How long has it been, millennia, since you last got new clothes?
Not quite that long, but
And you'll just have this, like, kind of, insulting, like, demeaning laugh, kind of, like, coming across from this person. And they just kind of, like, look over you, and you can already start to see, like, they're drawing, like, measurements, like, beside you, again, in the mirror itself. And you can kind of hear as they're, like, discussing. Um, but effectively, you've got, like, a custom tailor, and you can get everything. Um, Shit, I forgot what it's when it's handmade. But yeah, you can have like a tailor basically make a robe for you.
bespoke.
Yeah, bespoke. There we go, or bespoke. So you've got like your own tailor to make essentially a bespoke robe here. Um, yeah, I think the one thing that I get as a quote from this person is effectively to say, if you are to imagine what you would desire, I can produce it for you. So you need only use your mind, and your wish will be granted. So I think this is where, like, the general idea is that if you guys have, I think there were 3 parts in the actual Tower of Illusion play, um,
Or if you
which
count the narrator.
I have a feeling I'm meant to be the narrator, but I don't think the narrator has a robe.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was going to be a on stage thing or not.
What did I do? Did I drop the notes in Discord
Yeah,
for that play? Okay.
the-
Yeah, so
it's
that's the
like
handout
Candace,
A
Fenor,
illusion.
and Simone.
So in the long run, um, I guess really he should probably also say, almost again, just being kind of demeaning. I feel like tailors are always very demeaning people. I hope it's not too tropey. But on a demeaning kind of level, kind of like looking down at you, maybe like forming a pair of spectacles on his head just for the purpose of looking over the spectacles. So he's even further looking down at you. He'll kind of look to you and, you do have the coin to pay for this robe?
Fen will give them a description of what they're looking for, which I imagine is 3 different outfits, and ask how much it would run.
Each of our robes for the highest quality silks is approximately. Damn, I don't know if the Netherese would have the same coin value. 250 gold. I feel like if a Netherese told you a price tag, it's going to be completely different. But yeah, it's 250 gold to buy a silk robe.
I don't think we have that kind of money, which would
Certainly,
effectively.
you wouldn't. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I said, well, you're effectively it's going to be 750 gold to take care of the costumes for the play, correct?
Yeah.
Brennick is going to, because he knows also, I don't think, we don't have 750 gold, but he's going to look towards. Oh, wait, no, he would have to step onto the platform to actually see this. He can just hear what's going on. Um,
Yeah.
Assuming this is still all loud, but he'll say, you certainly don't expect us to lug around all that coin with us. This is for a these pieces are needed for a play being put on by high illusionist Ajamar. Certainly has informed us you should simply charge it to his account, and that would be settled forthwith. Obviously, that's a lie.
Roll an insight for me, please. So, as you say this, a few moments are going to pass by, and you're going to start to realize I can't hear you. So, if you want to bargain with it, you probably have to have Fen step aside and approach yourself and stand on the dais, which seems to be effectively like this illusion or this creature has a connection to that little platform.
Gotcha. Well, after Brannick says this out loud and then realizes, okay, maybe, there's no response, so maybe you can't hear him, he'll look to Fen and almost kind of like give a little shrug, like, have another idea as to how he might try to get these. So he's also thinking of all those space spiders on the ceiling, and like, if his lie doesn't hold, we might be in trouble.
So I guess if he doesn't notice outright, Fen will repeat what Brannick had said to the tailor, that these items are for a play put on by the evocation master, and we're the illusion master, and that should be charged to his account.
Gotcha. Roll a persuasion for me, Fen. And I think Brennick, like, if you repeat what Brennick said, I'm pretty sure Brennick actually said High Illusionist, was it Abjur?
Ajamar? Yeah.
Yeah. So as you kind of make this commentary, you're going to see as the creature kind of like measuring you up is going to kind of smile for a moment and, yes, perfect. High Illusionist Ajamar is one of our greatest customers. It's quite a pity that we're so far away that it takes 5 minutes for him to get here. We would make so much more coin. And before he can kind of finish this, the spiders up above you are going to start to reach down, and about a foot or so above your head, you can just kind of hear like the soft little clicks of their like mandibles and their legs as they're starting to drape silk over you. And um, assuming that you guys have already picked out which part each of you is going to play, and what like kind of like ways you want this costume to kind of look, they're going to start forming these costumes, and you'll see that the spiders are indeed like connected to this platform in that they're already weaving for it. The moment that it was understood that everything was paid for, the spiders are already weaving their silk to create these robes.
Yeah, so Brannick is thinking, having just looking over the play, like the probably Andis's clothing should be like the most kind of ostentatiously like regal. Maybe something a little less so for Simone or Simon.
Yeah, so even with like things like that, like this is going to be one of those things where you can see like a pauper's robe is still spun in such a beautiful pattern that it's like one of the most amazing things that you can really imagine. And then you compare it to like the regal one where there's a lot of extra like flourishes and um almost like sparkles kind of like added into it. But it's simply one of those things where even the drab one would look absolutely stunning and amazing. And you can basically see that this is one of those things. I feel like you can often see with things like created for show business. Like even the stuff that is meant to look like shit, meant to look like somebody would wear it every single day of their life and never be able to afford to wash it. It still is like an absolutely beautiful version of said like very mundane piece of clothing. Um, but each of you can take about 10 minutes for the spider to weave this robe for you. And in that time, you can have the other two kind of hanging out in the store, looking around the store in general. There's probably about 15 or so of these robes, about 10 more of these robes that are inside of this store. None of them are in particularly like designed for that play, but you can kind of see like um, maybe enough to notice that a few of these robes might have been commissioned by somebody who's perhaps like a new graduate from the School of Transmutation. Some of them seem to be more mundane, as if somebody might not have actually been a part of a school, but you can spot like some nicer robes in this place, and there's probably about 10 more of these really fine ones where the spider silk is like almost like a picture scene, like in a living picture scene.
Yeah, so the graduate rows, do they have like symbols of the like the schools, particular schools?
Yeah, I feel like it would almost be like where you have like a graduation, like the stole, that's almost like the scarf. I feel like this would almost be like having that kind of like sewn into the edges of it kind of thing. I don't know enough about like tailoring and like robes and whatnot, but I feel like that would kind of be an upgrade level of like having that like what like 3 inch almost like extra piece like on the inner side of the robe where you've got like all of the really fancy kind of sewing. You can see a lot of like the gold thread.
Yeah, I'm thinking like like during like graduation processions, like when you have like the professors come down and they've all like depending on the color and maybe even the cut, it like kind of tells you like if you know what you're looking at, like it tells you okay they have this degree or this specialty or whatever.
Yeah, like I think you guys would start to recognize I think it's the same with like a doctor of philosophy. That the purple robes are the robes of like the high evokers. Um, I don't think there's any reason to see other purple robes in this place. But I feel like it would be enough to recognize that maybe I'm trying to think. It's now been like 10 years since I graduated, or 12 years. I'm trying to think if there was a third color besides the black, but I almost feel like you might see one or two of those robes that are in there that show sign of being like effectively like a master of that sort of magic, but that master is also not the high transmuter. And I think that would be kind of the difference, is to recognize that there's probably only 7 purple robes in this place. This, or 8. Or, no, I'm sorry, I'm trying to add 1 to it. There's probably only 9 purple robes. One of those would be Erothalas, and his is probably extra compared to all of their purple robes. But the 9 of those individuals are all set apart from the rest of this world, because they are or not even the rest of this world, but at least with this city. Um, so I feel like, I want to say there's green robes. I feel like green was one of the colors, at least with my university, but I can't think of
I
what the
feel
third color was.
Yeah, I feel like there would be probably like the regular degree, master's, doctorate.
I felt like Masters was when they added the actual like scarf, like the stole was actually a part of it. Because I felt like there was something that made all of the Masters look different. Maybe that's what it was, that all of the Masters had a stole. So undergraduate, because there had to be something to separate undergraduates who had like some sort of honors from the masters. That's what I'm kind of forgetting, and I don't remember from my graduation. I do remember that the doctorates were all those purple robes, at least at the University of Akron. But I feel like that's kind of what you're looking for, and that's kind of what I would expect to see here, is that you've got like pretty mundane like black robes for students. Most of these robes probably would not fall into that zone. Um, but maybe like if you were graduating with honors or like the cum laude kind of thing, maybe like on that level, you might have a stole that you get from this place. Most of the robes that would be among those 10 really fine ones from the phase spiders would probably fall into like master's level. And then again, like I would say explicitly, you would not see any purple robes in this place. Because again, you have only seen the purple robes on effectively the corpses of the high. And this might be where you really connect those dots, that all of the corpses that you've seen of these high evoker, the high illusionist, they were all wearing the purple silken robes.
Right. Yeah, so Brannick is thinking, while we're here, once we're done with the play costumes, he would move to kind of step back onto the platform, and he would be kind of like asking, how much for one of the, and he would describe like one of the black robes, because he's thinking, I showed up back in civilization with something like this. It's really more for kind of like flavor sort of thing.
So the second time you step onto the platform, or rather, once you return to the platform, after you've had the spiders create one of these, it doesn't respond in the same way. I don't think there's any reason to assume this person was created as the actual shopkeep. So I feel like it would be almost more of a recognition to see that there isn't another person in the reflection. Um, that it doesn't seem to activate again. Um, I don't know if you get an error message. It's kind of a weird thought, but I guess maybe on some level, perhaps Mixel you just kind of hear like almost a 404 message in your head. Oh, my apologies. Silksmith Mixel is quite a busy individual, and you're only allowed to make one request every a year or two. My apologies, but I do understand that you cannot get enough of my services.
Disappointing, but
But
yeah.
if you
Brennick
roll
will-
a if you roll an intelligence check, I mean you vaguely remember it saying 250 gold for the robe, and you can kind of like looking around at this place. Um, Pretty much like the idea here is all of the robes that this store makes are all of that same quality. So there's 10 more of these robes in here that are worth 250 gold. The question is at what point do you want to buy/steal them?
Right, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, Brennick is he's a little leery of trying to steal with all those face spiders right up on the ceiling there. But if something would come to him, but we have more important things to do now, so he's not going to press the issue here. But it'll be kind of niggling in the back of his head.
So along the same kind of lines of us delaying it last week, I feel like they kind of wanted to delay it to force Justin to be a part of the play. Do you guys want to delay the play for Rashad to take part in it? Do you guys want to actually go through the play in all the hilariousness of acting out the play, or do you guys just want to narratively kind of skip over that?
I mean, I'd like to kind of like see how it could like actually do it, but probably wait for Rashad. Um,
Gotcha.
I think we could essentially like our idea now is like, okay, now we have these, but maybe we'll go to the Tower of Necromancy before we try to return to the Illusion Tower. Um, but yeah, I prefer to wait for Rashad since you guys waited for me last week. So
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be fun to do.
and I had a Brannick has a couple ideas on like some of the the creativity, like use some stuff to kind of special effects type stuff.
So returning to the Necromancy Tower, again, you're pretty close to where it is. You guys have already kind of spotted where the arch kind of collapsed. One of the like legs of this tower is already missing. So it really just has like the main kind of like foot of the tower lacking like the separate part that like arched away. So there's like a singular staircase kind of leading into the actual tower here. You've spotted the door. Do you all approach and just enter into the staircase of that part of the tower?
I think Brannick will approach it, but he's trying to keep an eye on these kind of spectral hands as he does to see if they, as he gets closer, whether they seem to react in any way before he would step through or go to open the door.
And likewise, I think out of all the towers, this one will probably raise thin suspicion level 5.
All right, so you're just kind of like cautiously approaching the door.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're gonna see anything different from the hands in particular. I feel like I don't even remember if the hands were actually a part of the normal book. Um, I feel like there were some hands in the normal thing to like expedite the actual like excavation of the cadaver of the high necromancer. And I feel like that was part of why I described them like that. I thought that was an interesting way and a cool way to like aggrandize the netherese magic to like make something that you can kind of do bigger for the netherese to do it. So I don't think there's any reason to initially have like these hands doing anything. But when you do go and open the door, like very cautiously, kind of like looking around, the hands might seem to like almost like pay interest to you in that kind of weird, like Adam's family kind of way that they were very emotive in how, what was his name? The thing would move. Because I feel like that was a really well done, like, you get emotions out of that hand. And it's almost like the closer you guys get, the hands kind of pay attention to you. And you can kind of see like that this like picture and flowing like substance of these hands all along the surface of this tower, they recognize that you're approaching it. And as you kind of like reach out towards like the door and effectively like this handle before you, you might see like little like shudders in their muscles as they're kind of like paying attention to you getting closer. So it's probably pretty creepy. But you're also not seeing them like flow out of the stonework where they actually became corporeal like last time. So they're still kind of stuck in like this two-dimensional world, just like on the surface of the stone. And as you kind of start to open the doorway, still very slowly, very like creeped out by the hands, um, you might find yourself surprised, not because something visually starts to happen, but that your senses are immediately going to be assaulted in your sense of smell. Immediately, you are going to smell something caustic, like burning in your nostrils. You might even have like a feeling in your actual eyes and kind of your like a mucous membrane where you start to feel this like caustic nature to the air that is going to start to come out of this hall. Let me just have the two of you make Constitution saving throws real quick. Yeah. So your eyes might sting, Brennick. Your nose stings. It's not like especially painful or anything like vicious. But I feel like that's kind of a solid understanding. Like as you kind of like open this door, like there is like a little bit of extra kind of pain to things here. Um, but you guys have a stairway before you. You can, I guess it was kind of too soon to really throw that up there. You can start to approach into this place. Um, if you guys start moving through the tower, it's kind of going to be a pretty similar thing where first few floors all seem to be kind of like student areas, like clearly classrooms, areas to practice things. Um, there's definitely this continued kind of caustic smell to things. But let me get an investigation from both of you here.
And all the time we're seeing this, Brannick's thinking Boleyn would love this place. In here already. He's also thinking, wonder what she'll say if we find her again and tell her Valixis is no longer a threat to her.
My bad. That might not have come through. Can I get a D4 plus 1 from each of you? And then that many D100s? Let's get them all.
It's just like 6 4s on D4s in a row or something.
It would definitely be easier if you guys weren't rolling the 4s. But I don't think you should mind. Let me get a D4 from Don. And then 2d4 from Brennick. All right, so Don, that's 4 normal potions for you there. Jarek, that's another greater healing potion. 4 potions. And then let's do... Where's some cool potions? Do a potion of flight. And... Potion of flight and can't think of another one offhand here.
Potion of like spider climb. I don't know if that's next.
Spider climb's a solid one.
I know there's like a regular potion of climbing, probably, I think.
It's all the same thing. I think spider climb basically just means you don't have to put any effort into it. You just stick.
And so these are of the 4 potions that we found, right?
And then let me have you roll, I think, a D12, please. Actually, wait. Just roll odd or even. Just any die.
I think you cut out there. Who's rolling?
My bad. It would have been Justin. Roll a D5. I feel like somebody already has ammunition for this, but you can find a magical blowgun.
Fen, I think, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, you know what? With that, I'm going to get rid of those 2 potions that I told you here, and I'm going to have you roll on some poison potions. And we'll have those potions be with the blowgun and some powerful poisons.
Gotcha. So the potion of flight and the potion of spider climb, right? Take those out.
Yeah, Yep, those are... I'm going to get rid of those 2, yeah. And I'm going to give you poisons. I was already kind of thinking of it. I feel like that's why I never created the next chart for this, was because I wanted to separate the potions as well as like poisoning potions. That's what it is. It's in my normal notes. Roll a D14 or 2D14 actually, Brennick. God, there's like 2,000 gold poisons in here. Can you hear me, Brennick? Can you roll 2D14s? Excellent.
Yep, sorry. It's starting to roll 20's lagging for me a little bit.
I gotcha. Saturday tends to be like that, I feel like. So 3, 4, 5. I think you guys already found an essence of ether. They might have found that last time. But you've got another of those. 6. And then serpent venom. So you can write down essentially essence of ether and serpent venom. Both of those are poisons. Not sure those will show up in D&D Beyond, so you might have to create those, but we can kind of get back to them, and I can let you know what they are in the future if they don't show up.
Yeah, they do actually show up. Probably makes more sense to give the serpent venom to Ben, since it is bullet. I think it gets coded onto a weapon.
I wouldn't be surprised. Let me get a D18 from you, Brennick. And if you roll a D20, just re-roll a 19 or a 20. So write down magical whip. Ooh, roll a d20. If it's a 20, it can be a vicious whip. And then because Justin rolled lower, I'm just going to finish his before I do the rest of yours, Don. My bad.
Okay.
I think I actually have some of those weird dice in they use them in DCC, but
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts about having online rollers is that you can just type in the particular ones. The last one for you, Brennick, is going to be an instrument of the bards. If you have any interest in a particular kind of instrument, we can certainly make it like that kind of instrument. Otherwise, if you ever actually want to figure out which one it is, we can roll against that. But effectively, right now, because nobody's actually a bard, we'll just leave it generic right now.
yeah, I don't have any particular one in mind, so I'm good with rolling eventually to figure it out.
Don, the next of yours is a detective notebook. That is not from Wizards. That's actually from something Justin got me, so I'll have to give you information on the detective notebook.
Okay.
And then 66 is Necklace of Fireballs. I think roll a d10 with a Necklace of Fireballs to see how many charges it has. So just 4 beads. When you add a Necklace of Fireballs to your character, you should see a portion where you can determine how many beads it has, and you just want to write down that it has 4.
Okay.
Medallion of Thoughts. I have a feeling that is from the Griffin saddlebag as well, where I'll just have to give you the information of. And then the last one is a Weapon of Warning. Let me have you roll, I think, just a die. Odd is going to be simple. Even is going to be martial. And then roll a d20 again or a d18. That's going to be a Warhammer of Warning. So let's actually take a little bit of a break here. If we can keep it to 10 minutes, I feel like that would be great. If we could come back at 15 after. I'm going to run to the restroom and I'm going to type up those into that party notes so they don't get left behind. And then hopefully I can also grab pictures of the ones that are from Griffins.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yep. Okay.
There was definitely a level though where I wanted Yithrin to like inundate you guys with magical items so you couldn't actually attune to everything that you would want.
Yeah, and some of these if Dorian survives and he ends up becoming a main character, I think I had him probably as a bard, so
I would be perfectly fine for a lot of reasons if you guys gave them like a single magical weapon, but like if he was a bard, because I think we did discuss that, I would not be against giving him the bard thing right away.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like we, essentially we carry it with us even if we can't use it, so that somebody could. But yeah, I mean, if you're cool with that, then yeah, give it to him. And then yeah, I guess in that case we can roll when we get back to see what it actually is, or if you want, I don't know. I know some are I think more powerful than others, so obviously you don't want to be overpowered. So I'm good with whatever you decide you want it to be if you have one in mind. Just like based on the kind of the thought I had in my head for what kind of bard he is, it would probably be something relatively simple, like a lute or a lyre or something like that.
Yeah, that's one of the things where I feel like whichever one comes up, I don't think that's nearly as important as almost like with armors. Armors like automatically fit you when they're magical. I like the idea that if a bard were to pick up like a lyre of the bard, it could turn into a drum if that's what they preferred.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, and that makes sense, especially if it's attunement. Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
anyway,
I'm not going to hold it. If you like randomly rolled for one that's more powerful than the other, that's perfectly fine by me.
okay, yeah. I mean, I'll leave it up to a roll then. Um, but yeah, I'll be back in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm back.
Can you roll a d8? So that's going to be one of the uncommon ones. Can you roll a d3? So that is the Mac Firmid Cittern.
Okay, I'll have to look that up. I think a cittern is kind of like a stringed instrument, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it looks like almost like a cross section of like a cup or like a stemless wine glass, and it like has the strings like in the center of it, kind of. Oh no, I see the picture of it. It looks like exactly like a guitar. I think they have like the big rounded back almost, like an apple.
okay, yeah,
But yeah, I
yeah.
think if you type in the Mac /, it should bring it up.
Okay, I'm gonna make a backpack for Dorian just so I can make a note that it's on him.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if the Medallion of Thoughts was from the ledger. My bad, I got distracted by the medallion.
Okay, yeah, and if there's any like any of those spells you don't want him to be able to cast,
Nope, it's fine. At this point, you guys are approaching where I think D&D is meant to start to break open.
yeah, we're what level 10? No.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, if you guys actually completed the illusion right now, I would have you leveling up to level 10. So if we get through Necromancy, I'll have you guys going up to level 10. You're basically in tier 3 at this point. That's the detective notebook inside of Discord. I'll create an item for that in time in D&D Beyond where you can look at it like that. I'm trying to see what's up with the Medallion of Thoughts. I don't know if that's actually from Wizards, and I just don't remember. Yes, it is. Apparently, I just didn't recognize this. Medallion of Thoughts, you should be able to add um, just through D&D Beyond.
Okay.
Ooh, I wonder if it was in the basic rules and it never made it into the Dungeon Master's Guide, and that's what it is. And did you say you were able to get those 2 poisons, Justin?
Yes, yep, they showed up when I went to add the items. And
Excellent.
yeah, Fen. Yeah, I'm gonna give Fen the serpent venom.
I feel like it might be viable to say with each of those, like roll a d6 and maybe have them be like a d3 charges of each. So like 2 of the ether. Yeah, so I rolled for a random encounter, but I don't actually want to dissuade from moving forward with the Necromancy Tower. So while I technically had Valine elsewhere in the city and you guys didn't really see and she didn't see you, I feel like maybe it works to not distract further by basically having Valine encounter you all here again. So I think that's kind of the solution I'm going to go for. And we will vaguely have that moment where Valine kind of like coming up behind you guys might then notice that Valixis is nowhere to be seen. And at some point, her owl will kind of fly forward and maybe alighting on one of your shoulders. Was it Brennick tends to be behind, but you open the door. I guess probably Fenn's shoulder. You'll just kind of like see as her owl kind of flies up to you. And then you're going to hear, has there been a problem with the little one? Does she not travel with you?
He's come to the clearing at the end of the path.
Wait, you said she's come to the clearing at the end of the path?
At the end of the path. That's a gunslinger, Dark Tower.
I got you. I felt like it was a reference that I was missing. It sounded like a very good like explanation for she's dead, but that would make sense if it's gunslinger.
Yeah, Dark Tower.
She fell, rather literally.
You understand. I never wanted to leave. If our friend is gone, may I rejoin you?
I would welcome your company back.
Yes, we're not blind to the fact of your reticence with traveling with us, but it would be good to have you again.
Oh, and does Valine appear to have suffered any of the like the Nothic effects? She looked different from the last time we saw her.
So I feel like I've kept up on rolling for her. She like right now, like this is just the owl with you.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
as that kind of conversation goes through, you guys will have a few moments where it is still you guys like essentially inside of the necromancy tower, um kind of finishing up like your like travels through the staircases, and effectively I think I'm on the screen but I've not dropped you guys on it yet. Yeah. So before you actually like get to this kind of next scene in the necromancy tower, you'll hear like this. You'll see the owl kind of return to you, and she's speaking through her owl. Um, so when you do see her, you're first going to hear effectively that kind of same like thing where Professor Scott doesn't shut up, and will constantly be kind of elucidating different thoughts and theories about different parts of this and that, talking about the actual like hands on the outside of this, and that conversation of hearing Professor Scott's voice again will be kind of the first sign that she's getting closer and closer to you guys, essentially ascending the staircase below. When you do first see her, um, so right now I've got Ged and Dorian look like uh, the Nothics. Valine and Fen are both kind of at the same level where their nose is starting to like descend on their face and starting to almost shrink into their face as their eyes are starting to meet, where it's almost like they have two eyelids that are sharing the same like figure eight shaped eye socket. So they're kind of right around that verge of, are those two separate eyes or is it a single eye at this point? And that's kind of where she sits. I think the last time you saw her, she had only suffered the first level, where it was just like a vague understanding that you can vaguely notice that her eyes are moving closer together.
Yeah, Evelyn hasn't had too much luck. As soon as she gets back to normal size, her eyes start moving together. But yeah, Brannick is more than happy to welcome her back.
And for Justin Brannick, might as well take this medallion of thoughts because it pretty much mirrors the helm of telepathy. And that way,
Gotcha. And I think he already has access to that. It just might be something that perhaps you can expand with, or you can give it to Valine, one of those two, because Valine will always be kind of like approaching any magical items. Like, how about me?
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because Brannick he knows the spell, so he cast it.
I'll take that off my inventory. You can put that on hers.
So among kind of the things that you all can kind of pass between each other, let's even like go ahead and kind of retcon that like Valine kind of rejoined you all like earlier in those actual searches instead of like at the end of that time. So you kind of have time to go over some of the things that have happened in, I think it's been 2 sessions effectively without her when she split. So you can kind of gain a little bit of an understanding. Did you all ever pick up on Avarice? Did Valixis ever talk about her?
That was the tiefling, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he ever shared her where that's like beyond meta knowledge at this point.
I don't recall Valixis ever like in character speaking about her, or really anything about like what she was seeing when she was like after she lost her sight.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think he did. Um, and I don't think that's one of the things that I shared in particular when his clone was basically speaking. Oh, but you guys don't even remember the clones. So that even erases that moment too. All right. Yeah, so I don't even know if the surviving ones of you even know about Levistus to go after him or to go after her there. When we talked about that the other day, Justin?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think if because he was mentioned in the clone room, in the clone situation, but we don't have no memory of that. And I think anytime like Levistus was speaking to Valixis, it was in her head, so we wouldn't have heard it.
Yeah, that was all basically like the side. She was having like 2 different conversations, and you guys only were partaking in one of them. Yeah, I feel like he kept that secretive enough, and I'll talk to Rashad in the future, but I feel like offhand he kept that secretive enough that he might keep himself from ever having that higher level quest. Don, Justin, and I were talking about like it might be an end game kind of quest that you guys might go to hell and like do a rescue mission to save Valixis going into Stygia. But yeah, it just kind of dawned on me there, but that I feel like between that modify memory and the way he played it, he might never have shared enough information that you guys actually even know.
I mean, I guess we would know something weird happened when like her body was encased in like twice now encased in ice, but unless we had some way of knowing like what that signified other than just being
Yeah, so that would almost have to be the start of it, is like basically progressing through some pretty high level divination and kind of like study to figure out what might cause that and then divination to locate her.
Yeah, because I think while she never talked openly about it, there were a couple of occasions where Fen was at least aware that there was something beyond the surface, what was going on.
Yeah, and like among the ice thing, I feel like part of the ice that almost like throws this whole campaign for a loop is if you never actually investigate the right group in this story, the stories of people who freeze into these blocks of ice makes perfect sense to understand that as Arl doing it.
Yeah, I think that's like the because I think we heard about like some of that back when we were in 10 towns, but yeah, we'd have no, as far as I can tell, no reason to attribute that to anybody other than Oral. Plus, Oral just attacked us or had people attacking us and saying we're never going to leave, so it would also make sense that Elixis turning into a block of ice again is like, oh, Oral finally caught up with her.
Yeah, I think the only
Yeah,
time that it was mentioned was when we were at the magician shop with the upside down pyramid. I think she questioned them about
oh,
the
she
names
did
of it.
ask Levistus by name there, you're right.
Now, I don't necessarily think you might put two and two together, but I think the name was out there from that encounter.
That is enough, though, that goes a long way when it comes time for if the group decides to turn that into a future quest. That one moment, because that was the one time, and I feel like it was after that when she really started to recognize, because that was before she was under Levistus's sway. She just heard it as a name. Yeah, that is clutch. But who knows how that will all kind of add up because it still has to kind of come to the point where like you as the players have to decide like, hey, let's go after Levistus.
Yeah, and plus we were all suffering from like PTSD and madness at that point, I think.
It's definitely even with this like massive sweet note taking tool, it is definitely difficult to keep up with everything across like the tiny little happenings of a campaign. But kind of back into things here after that little tangent, because that definitely does kind of crack me up. We'll have you guys kind of reunited with Valine, kind of going through some of these lower levels. And you guys can catch her up. Eventually, she's going to start to catch you all up on kind of her focus. And part of what I think drew her away, where perhaps you would not have kind of crossed her path in those initial things, is basically her sharing that she's been studying the obelisk that is effectively now kind of east of where you all are at the Necromancy Tower. That black obelisk back in the center or on like the northeast of Yithrin. And she will kind of describe that much of her time has been spent here, not necessarily because she knew that was the way into the central spire, uh, but that, and I almost want to leave this as kind of like an odd understanding of the flow of magic around that object kept drawing her towards it. And she can't quite explain why it was, but each time she kind of set off from like one area to another, she kept finding herself kind of making her path um, through and back to this object. You know, like one time where she's kind of walking along and she starts to see some of those, like, she'll recognize like the same hands that you all saw one day, that kind of pushed her like back into an alley to where she was again coming out by the object. And just a lot of kind of incidental things where she just seemed to come back to it. And that's when she kind of stopped trying to go elsewhere. And most of her time since you all have split up has effectively been her in that same area. Um, and I feel like that's kind of how she will back up most of where she's been. Um, I think she would be able to share with you all, and it might bring a little bit of recognition with like Dazan still consciously in you, that those outer spires are all wizard towers in very similar ways to the one that you all found. They're individuals, but lesser wizards. So they're, let's say this is kind of that middle class, how we were discussing the robes, where it's almost like master's level, but they're not like high, with like high honored wizards kind of thing. But all of those spires are certainly of interest in pretty similar ways where all of these towers are of interest. But the towers themselves hold the key to that central spire. And I think those two kind of big points are kind of where um, she might sit with kind of how she explains where she's been. And I think there should be a recognition from Professor Scott that that spire the spires are powerful magical devices beyond his understanding, but known throughout much of Faerun. And think I think he could say at least one has been known or found within the jungles of Chult. So for now, that is super meta knowledge for you, Justin, because that should connect the dots between those two devices, those two spires. Because you've seen now in the two campaigns where they exist in 5th edition. No explanation what they do, no explanation exactly how to do anything with them, but at present, you can understand that that object is one of the most powerful objects on this whole city. And that is in part why Valine was often nowhere to be seen by you all. It was because she was where you guys were not looking.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, Brannick has never been to Chult, so.
Yeah, as far as your characters go, it's perfectly separated from that's why I say like that's like super meta knowledge that it doesn't affect either of your characters, but it is one of the like world building things of kind of how they played 5th edition.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're still inside of the Necromancy Tower. You guys are still kind of under kind of this like caustic kind of feel from all of the air here. Let me get a medicine check from the two of you. I think on some level, Fen can recognize that the like air is almost like stagnant, and it's kind of embalming fluid. Can't think of the name. I want to say an F. But
Formaldehyde?
Yeah, formaldehyde. There we go. It's kind of like the more you're going into this place, the more you're kind of getting this sensation of effectively formaldehyde and like this like really stagnant air. That part of it's like burning you almost like acid, but you can also almost kind of recognize like maybe it's like the actual preservative in the formaldehyde. I remember dissecting a squid in grade school, and that smell didn't go away for months. I feel like it's kind of that weird level of how it just sticks to everything.
Oh yeah, the old fetal pig.
Oh, that's the wrong tower. My bad. Psych. So eventually, you all are going to come to higher level on the stairs here, where you're going to come into this room and you will already kind of hear things happening ahead of you inside of this room. You can see on this like operating table that's kind of at the head of the stairs or at the top of the stairs. There seems to be a Nothic that is like bound to the table itself, arms and legs, and is it squirming? Feel like it's probably squirming. You can see signs that it's conscious. You can see that there are corpses like along kind of the eastern side of this room that are all kind of set around in like those seats along the kind of northeast side of this room. And you can spot that there is like a large jar probably in front of those four seats and the four cadavers. And this jar is just filled with a brain and some sort of like green fluid. Let me get perception checks from you all here. Holy giant Nothic. All right, so when you see all of these corpses, I think each of you perfectly see high enough that none of them have hands. So there's like four corpses sat on those seats, no hands. I think everything else kind of about them, they look normal enough. But you'll definitely notice that. And as you kind of approach, you're going to hear kind of yeah, I think just kind of outwardly hearing things, not necessarily like telepathically. You're going to hear, "Oh, guests, welcome. Have you come to see the procedure?"
Brannick is going to, he's taking this all in. He's, a little queasy, but he will try to kind of play it off and kind of put on a stoic air. And I think he'll not trusting himself to open his mouth and not wanting to get that smell any further in. He will just kind of like give like a short kind of nod, um, and maybe step in a little kind of from the top of the stairs further into the room.
All right, so you're more or less just kind of like continuing forward, but not like acknowledging hearing anything.
Well, no, so he's kind of like he's nodding at the question, but he doesn't. Essentially, he's a little queasy, seeing kind of all this stuff, and with like the smell and everything that's kind of pervading, he doesn't want to like kind of open his mouth to speak. So he's just kind of, when the question is asked about like, "Are you here for the procedure?" Um, he would nod at first, and then if he didn't, I guess he didn't. Yeah, he didn't actually see who um, asked the question, so maybe he would kind of nod and then realize maybe he can't be seen, and um, then he would just kind of say like yes, but aloud.
So as you move a little bit more into the room, even like as you're still nodding, you'll start to see as the jar with this brain in it, just kind of over here, also still way too big. over here on this table, the jar, as you kind of move into the room, is going to start to like levitate off of the table. And you'll see as it kind of like moves over towards the corner, and like two uh, hands are going to kind of like float up towards a like lab coat, and you'll see as the lab coat kind of like drapes around the outside of this jar with this brain inside of it, and then the hands kind of like sink into the lab coat as if it's putting them on, and you see as it kind of like spins around, and most of the time the sleeves of the lab coat cover this like null space between the jar and between these hands. And one of you rolled higher. I feel like it was Fen. Brennick. Brennick, you can spot like one of these hands is a right hand, and it's very white and pale. And the other hand is a right hand, and it's very much dark brown. These are clearly two different hands, but they're kind of floating around as if they're meant to be like this. And you just kind of see as this thing like turns around and it's putting on its lab coat, and you can see as it's like adjusting the collar around like the base of the vat. Well, you've arrived a little bit early. Our subject is not yet ready, but it is a quite delightful time, and if you're interested in the arts, you're most certainly not too early.
This is seeing all this is reminding Brannick of something he's read in one of the books that he had picked up in the other spire. But he is kind of going to look back towards Fen. Um, what do you think, Fen?
Here's gruesome.
My bad. What was that? You said it smells gruesome?
Yes. Yeah. Are these stairs to the left of us going up?
Yeah. That's where you guys would be coming from, is that like left turn stairway.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as gruesome as it all seems, I guess we're here to see the show.
Brannick would kind of looking back towards the brain. Just remind me again what we hoping to learn here.
It's actually a simple process. The creation of a brain in a vat is a pretty mundane art for any skilled necromancer such as myself, and I hope to apply it to this creature here. If you would be a dear, can you restrain it, render it unconscious? Do you possess magical skills?
I do.
Excellent. It is most important that you do not harm its physical being. And it's just gonna kind of like walk over there, and you'll see is like, again, like there's nothing in between the hand and this actual like floating vat, but it's gonna kind of like start to like pet the head of the Nothic. And you just kind of see as it's like stroking around the eye, and it's like, "Oh, it's best if we are able to calm the creature beforehand. If they sense panic, everything can go horribly wrong if they start to stress themselves. It's most important that we are able to use the creature when it is at its happiest." If you would like some of the smells and things that might be hurting you, we have certain poisons here. If you would be so kind and grab them from that shelf there. And it doesn't have eyes to look at you, Fen, but almost like the center seam of the jacket kind of like turning towards you a little bit, and then it kind of like points off to the shelf in the southeast. I feel like that's kind of the best sense of it's kind of speaking towards Fen at that point to like kind of come over here. Those might be part of what's causing you troubles, but they're useful to rendering this Nothic unconscious.
So Sen will walk over and look at the shelf, looking for the.
Yeah, I think overall, like, there's plenty of different poisons in there. Probably with the fresh knowledge of you've now seen like the essence of ether twice recently here, and then you just got some more of the serpent venom. You might notice those on the shelves, but there's plenty of vials of different things on this shelf. Do you want to grab one of the ones that you're like most apt to notice? You might even notice also that there are drow poisons on there. I'm not sure if you've necessarily given Fen reason to know specifically the drow poisons. I don't know if you saw them. I think you guys actually pulled drow poisons from the two outside of here. But regardless, if you had any other reasons in your like life to encounter the drow, I think that would be a third poison that really sticks out to you.
Okay, yeah, we ran into him in the tower. Under.
But
We
that's
were
what I was thinking. Like, did you actually see the poisons like in a vial? And I'm pretty sure you recovered poison from the drow.
maybe. I don't recall specifically. Yeah, I'll bring one of the drow ones over, knowing that it's a potent.
Yeah, so as you kind of return, it'll kind of like it just like pauses for a few moments. Oh, yes, you must administer that one as well. A sharp prick, any sort of wound through the outer epidermis. Once it enters into the creature's bloodstream, it should render it unconscious. And I think this whole time you guys would still have like one of those eerie, weird feelings that these Nothics create because they're a creature that can delve into your mind and they're almost like constantly like searching for secrets. And they almost like eat and consume your secrets. So it's a very weird feeling to be around them because it feels like somebody's trying to tell you like don't think about the thing that you want to keep most secret. And the moment you think about it, it's almost like the person's like,
Yeah, Brannick is trying to essentially blank his mind like Ghostbusters. Just don't think of anything.
and now there's a giant marshmallow man. So, assuming like Fen, do you put some of this poison like onto? I
I'll
think
put
you've got darts on.
I'll put it on an arrow tip and do it by hand.
Gotcha. Do you just do like kind of like a slash across its fat flesh? Do you just kind of like stab it in?
Yeah, just enough to prick.
Gotcha. So as the poison kind of like subsides through the creature, you might see like that initial like bit of its flesh kind of start to like go as the venom starts to like flow into it. You'll start to see as the muscles of the Nothic start to like give way and it starts to go unconscious. And then that eerie feeling of being like having your thoughts delved through is going to start to fade. Excellent. If you would be so kind, Let me have you do a. Uh, let's see. Oh, I should have had you do this. Do a medicine check for me, Fen. Excellent. Yep. And then the final stage is for it to start to like remove the actual brain. Um, do you have any interest in removing the creature's brain? I've done it so many times before. I certainly could show you, but it is quite exciting.
Nothing like hands-on knowledge, they say.
So if you would like to, Brennick, let me get a dexterity check from you.
Yeah, he's definitely kind of queasy, uneasy about this but he's it's gonna
The name of science.
drop it right in his foot.
So as you're kind of going, you're just going to hear this like backseat driver of yes, yes, excellent. No, stop. No. Oh, another subject wasted. You fool. Um, and I think as it kind of gets more and more angry as like the Nothic just kind of like you just have like this now like brain, but it's no longer has like any blood flowing to it. Like maybe it was trying to get you to remove like part of the actual like spine as well as like a little bit of the heart before like you actually like some of the actual like pulmonary system before you actually got it into the jar and you cut that like a little bit too soon. It's gonna just start to kind of like go off on this rant, and very quickly, like the parts of the Nothic are going to kind of like start to almost emulsify as they're like going to liquid in your hand and kind of like flowing to the ground. You might start to like wipe your hands off on the table, and the creature is going to kind of like you see as the lab coat kind of like drops a little bit and oh, well, no worry. There are a few more of you here. Is anyone else interested in attempting the procedure themselves?
That's quite all right.
Any of you? One of you? I need somebody.
I'm afraid I have another appointment after this, so I would be the timing simply is not ideal for me.
So, as Fen kind of like almost shirks it off, you're going to start to hear like movement from around the room, and there's going to start to hear like have sounds of like these hands kind of moving along the floor, just little sliding, and you can like kind of hear like almost the like goo of the flesh kind of like sticking behind it. I need you guys to roll for initiative. Nobody ever wants to become a brain in a vat. Just doesn't make sense.
It's funny because one of the books that Brannick found is called The Unfettered Mind, about how to become a brain in a vat, essentially.
I think one of the points that they're trying to get at is the idea that like this is a form of immortality. It just may not be the form of immortality that you want. Oh, I did not prepare the hands for this though. I've got the solution for that. Why can't I add a turn for them? What did I do wrong? I should have picked different numbers. That would have been wise. Alrighty. The first of these hands is going to rush for. I think right now it's going for Brennick. So the first one's going to rush for you, Brennick. Should be able to hit you with the 22.
Yep.
And it's going to do a massive 2 bludgeoning damage to you, as like this like sloppy like fleshy like mass just kind of like leaps up into you, and the moment it like slaps into your skin, you can just feel it like trying to like clench down into you, almost like it's doing. I feel like it's probably not PC to say Indian burn, but that it's doing an Indian burn to you. So other than that hand kind of crossing the room to attack Brennick, um, what would Fen like to do as this like weird professor in a vat is turning on you guys?
I guess I'm going to attack the one that's to the west of Brannick. Draw my sword.
Gotcha. So these are like simple, tiny hands. I'm going to throw it out there. You probably don't want to dedicate much more than a single attack at any given hand.
That's what I figured. So yeah, I'll start out with the sword strike.
Yeah, that's going to be a solid hit through it, and you can basically like cut through all of its like muscles and bones. That hand's just going to like disintegrate.
Then I'm gonna move into that spot and attack the one to the north of Brannick.
So that one's kind of moving around fast enough as the like I want to call it the professor, but there's Professor Scant. But like as he's like emphatically like pissed off about Brennick failing this surgery, just as you punch for that hand, you're going to miss it.
Then I'll follow that up with a unarmed strike, and that'll activate Agile Parry and end a turn.
That one's going to kind of similar way, just like punching into the hand, it will effectively disintegrate it. So got 4 more hands kind of rushing across this room. I think just pretty much 2 and 2 on each of you as they kind of cross over. So the first 2 on Brennick, I don't think any of those hit with a 13. And then does a 20 hit you with Agile Parry, or is it 21 now?
21.
Gotcha. So the 2 of these that each go for each of you will fail. And I think it's all but a 3 that stays behind. Sorry, I thought that was funny. It's going to go to the brain in the actual vat. And it's going to. It doesn't even have attacks. I think it's going to blast you guys with cone magic. And I need an intelligence saving throw from both of you. Does that fuck my hands that are in there? I'm going to say it can avoid its hands. I've never used a brain in a jar. Yeah, both of you are going to fail that. And it's going to deal.
Is that like a mental thing, or is that if it's a spell, I would have advantage, I think, for the mental spell?
It's one of the weird things here where for this thing, it's an action and it's on a recharge, whereas it has spells for other things. So I'm going to have to say this is more like a psionic. And it calls it magically emits psychic energy. So I'm going to say this kind of falls into where that advantage is not.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Yep.
Although, fuck that. I feel like this could be a TPPK. if it does go like that, because it also stuns you for 1 minute. Yeah, that's pretty fucking powerful. Not trying to kill you guys over a brain in the vat. It's supposed to be funny, I feel like. That is powerful. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm gonna say
Is
that
there
will
any
count as
is there any like at the end of your turn, or is it just a full 1 minute?
it's just for 1 minute. Oh wait, no, okay. Creature repeat the save at the end of each of its turn. Alright, that's a little bit better, because these hands aren't dangerous, but this thing I feel like could get it. So let's stick with my initial thought that this is effectively psionics and kind of a little bit different, like not a spell. And that's part of why it's under action economy. And hopefully this doesn't create something super deadly. But if it gets dangerous and you guys don't save in the first 2 turns, I'll probably have one of you come in as Valine and the other one come in as Galeria. Because again, I feel like this should be like comic relief more than severely dangerous.
Yeah, so I'm planning to have Brannick maybe burn one of his portent die, because he typically has a pretty good intelligence save.
That's kind of
In
what
these
I was
worlds.
thinking as well. I was surprised that you could fail that, but yeah, looking at it, you rolled what is that, a 2? So yeah, you guys are going to take 13 psychic damage, and each of you are going to be stunned for a minute. You can repeat the save at the end of your turn. So when it stuns you, that will then take it into Brennick's turn. You'll lose your turn, and then I think like your 6 might be effective, but you also have the 9.
Yeah, I'm gonna use the 9, make it an 18.
Gotcha. So that will unstun you at the end of your turn there.
Yep, gotcha.
And then there's 2 more before Fen. So I feel like 1 on each of you will be sufficient here. So first one will be against Fen. This one has advantage. It should hit with a 21. And then the one against Brennick is going to miss. And it's going to do 2 bludgeoning damage to you, Fen. And like the one that's attacking you, Brennick, it still looks like the brain in the jar is strangling you. Um, like it's still pretending this is its hand. Um, and you can almost hear like the struggle from the brain in the jar as it's like choking you, trying to get it through. Like this thing thinks that it has a body. Um, and then it's gonna go to Fen. Your turn will pass, and then make another intelligence saving throw for me. Does that sound good to you? I'm going to take that as a yes. So at the end of your turn, you will be unstunned. And it's going to go to. It's those same 4. So we're just going to do this as 2 on each of you again. So 2 on Fen, 2 on Brennick. I think the 19, that 16, should hit you because you don't have Agile Parry now. Or is that correct, Fen?
That is correct.
All right, so 3d4 plus 2 is damage on Fen, so a total of 6 bludgeoning. That's one of them crits. See, that's where I feel like switching crits over to the max damage plus 1 would at least make it a little more interesting. And then, what was it? 1 hits you, Brannick, with 21?
Yeah.
And that one will do 4 bludgeoning to you. And that will get us back around to the brain. I think. Oh yeah, see, it calls all of its skills psionics, but I feel like the other ones are still spells. Can innately cast the following spells. It's part of why I hate psionics. I think it's gonna cast Hold Person on Brennick. Can you make a? I think that is an intelligence saving throw again. So it's definitely not going to take effect there on you. And you're going to see. You shouldn't be. Who are. Leave my lab immediately. Who are you people? It's going to start to back away and start to kind of like float away at this point. Don't think you have any reason to take an attack of opportunity, Brennick. But do you have any reason to?
No, I think he's focused on all these hands kind of right up in his face. So yeah, he wouldn't be striking out.
Gotcha. So yeah, it's gonna kind of like start to move away as it like floats away. It's gonna lose like the actual medical coat around it. The hands are still kind of swarming around you, and it will be on Brannick.
Yeah, so Brannick was already preparing to do this before kind of the brain is like as the brain is saying this, and he's like shouting like we can get you another brain, but he's essentially throwing out his hands now as he kind of comes back to himself, and he's going to blast magic missile, and he's going to essentially shoot one dart into each of the three that are kind of up in his face to his right, like spraying it.
Gotcha. I don't think there's any way they can survive that. I think that's just going to drop all three. These are extremely powerful 0 CR creatures.
But yeah, he's otherwise shouting, "Get you a new brain!" Kind of like at the same time as this thing is, moving, and I think he will. Yeah, he's gonna stay there. I think, or maybe no, he'll instinctively. I think maybe he'd just back away a little bit, but he can get past the table, so he would just back away there into the corner away from the remaining hands.
Let's see. Yeah, you used your action, so I think the next hand is going to continue. And I'm sorry, Fen, but Brenna kind of killed the ones that are on him, so I'm going to kind of stick to the idea that it's still attacking you. 20 should hit, and it'll do another 2 bludgeoning damage to you. And then it will go to Fen.
And I don't know if they can get opportunity attacks, but two of them I think would have when I move.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it. Both miss.
Senna's going to flurry of blows this time and go right down the line with one strike on each. Hopefully, 3 out of the 4 will hit.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty much all you're looking for is a hit's a kill.
Ooh.
So kind of wading through these. The vat continues to kind of like float away And I think it's going to kind of like float through this towards this door. I think there's kind of like a divider there with another door to essentially like another set of stairways there. Um, and I think it's going to go for. Let me get a wisdom saving throw from Brennick. And again, advantageous. I think this is an actual spell versus. I don't know if they mean for psionics not to be spells. Um, so as it's kind of like weaving this spell, and you can kind of like almost like sense the magic, and you can feel it kind of like trying to like entice your brain. It's basically going to start to like chant into your head, and you can kind of like hear from this magic. It's like the incantation is a part of what it says, and then damn, I was speaking in common with this thing. It doesn't have telepathy. Whoops. Understands common but can't speak. Ah, that was a big mistake. This thing has no languages. How does it fucking speak? Damn it. Yeah, I don't even know what to say there. That's a weird fucking way to deal with something that's supposed to be role played. It can't speak?
I feel like given all the psionic
That's
powers, say it has some sort of telepathy or something.
I felt like one of the first like lines that I read from it though is like that it doesn't. I must have just gotten confused like in some of these things that I'm reading here. But yeah, like it's going to try to kind of like cast this spell, and you're going to feel the actual spell trying to like gain a hold of your mind. And I think with kind of the save, however it kind of plays out, you can kind of understand that this thing is trying to compel you, that finding it another creature to take its brain from is of the highest order. But you pass the save, like you're not compelled to do so, but this is what it's trying to do from you, or get from you. So it will go back to you, Brennick, and you have the full decision on whether you want to basically assist this thing and maybe let Fen know, or potentially just kill this thing. So whatever you would like to do, it will be your turn.
Yeah, so I think Brannick is going to kind of move forward, kind of like stepping over the hands. So that kind of he had kind of been saying earlier we can find you a new brain, but now he's going to, and let me know if this is too much. He's going to try and say, "Came here for the step into the spire. What is it?" And kind of as he shouts this, essentially he's going to try and cast detect thoughts on the brain, hoping that like by saying the question he can, try to get it to think of it as he's trying to delve into his mind or its mind. I mean, I don't even know if it actually thinks like thoughts like that, but that's what he's going to try. Okay.
Let me have you roll an Arcana check. When you start to try to delve into this creature's mind, you are very quickly going to come upon a blank void. And I think within moments of starting to enact this, recognition's going to cross you that this creature's brain, this creature's thoughts are protected by, I think it's pretty high level magic, but mind blank. I'm pretty sure it's like 6th level spell. But effectively, this creature is protected by a very powerful magical spell that effectively makes its brain not even exist when you're kind of like searching for thinking things around you. Because I think that's another quality of how you can use detect thoughts is to almost like sense living creatures, thinking creatures. It just doesn't even show up like on that spectrum.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't know if he would know specifically like mind blank, but he would probably at least be able
That's
to
that's
recognize.
part of why with the 27 you kind of crush it to where I would say on some level you might be aware that wizards who want to protect their thoughts, this is, I would say this might even be something that Brennick understands is valuable because once you gain enough levels of immortality, part of it becomes hiding yourself to where that spell becomes useful. You know what I mean? Like levels of immortality just being like clone is a level, becoming a lich is a different level. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different ways to protect your life. You now know becoming a brain in a vat is one of those levels. Um, and this spell in particular doesn't help you live forever, but it helps you to hide from people who might want to hurt you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So that will be Rennick's turn. His attempt at that. Um,
So, Fen, you've at least heard Brennick kind of calling for this. You don't seem to see any kind of response like between these two beings. But what kind of thoughts do you have as it comes back around to you, sir?
Um, that was hurting pretty bad. So I think he is going to warily position himself by the staircase and try to give him some cover here. Take the dodge action.
Gotcha. I don't think I kind of went into it because I felt like you were going elsewhere, Brennick. Um, So I think theoretically things have kind of calmed enough that maybe you'll hear from the creature. I've got to stick to it being able to speak to you guys. I am not the high necromancer Cadavex. I am just one of his students, Lawrence. I actually need to complete this procedure to be able to show my proficiency in such mundane magics. And I must admit I've failed up to this point.
yeah. So Brennick will. Um, now the brain seems to be no longer trying to kind of claw into his mind and seeing he's completely unable to do alternative. He'll kind of like looking towards the brain. Will and if we go find you another the brain to try on, perhaps you could help us with what we're looking for, trade of sorts.
I have some supplies remaining here. You're welcome to. And to return would certainly be desirable. I could try to help, but I am no more welcome in the High Necromancer's study than you yourselves are. Although perhaps you've shown yourselves more proficient than I. Perhaps Katovix, High Necromancer Katovix, would be more accepting of yourselves. I if you would allow me to continue my studies, I will do no more harm to you. And if you would be so gracious as to bring another creature, that would be wonderful. I
Well, our business with High Necromancer Caravax is rather urgent, but once we have completed our business with him, if chance presents itself, we can return. Is it a Nothic brain in particular you need, or will something else do?
nothing. It's interesting. Um, these creatures seem to be proliferating here in the city. I was not aware where they came from. That seems fitting. Yes. It's a shame this one has died too early. I would very much like to do this procedure again. It's very mundane, a very typical procedure, but one must keep up on their studies, keep fresh. Would you be so kind as to help me? You kind of notice at that point, like, this thing's not all there, and there is a certain level of it's kind of almost like reset. It's like recognition of you guys.
When he with that last question, I think Brannick kind of realizes that he's going to kind of look towards Fen and kind of motion his head towards the door, and to the brain, he'll say, "We'll be back to help you shortly." But he's going to essentially try to start moving, striding past it towards the towards this door here.
So around this room, Fen already understands that there's a collection of poisons over there. If you wanted to collect some of those up, there's some that you don't recognize as well as some that you do. Um, there's some alchemical supplies in this room if either of you wanted to basically collect up like an alchemy kit. Um, but if you had any interest in kind of like grabbing any of those things, you are welcome to grab. There's probably like 6 more doses of poisons that you guys don't recognize. I feel like that's a solid way to put it.
I'll definitely pick those up.
Gotcha. So you can put down an alchemist supply kit if you did pick that up as well. And then 3 doses of carrion crawler mucus and 3 doses of torpor.
What was that last one again?
Torpor?
Torpor?
I think, yeah, it's just TORPOR.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like similar to like a lethargy, just like weakness and.
I feel like it should be on D&D Beyond. I'm pretty sure these group like didn't create poisons because most of the stuff they created they gave me the separate like handouts for. So I have a feeling that one's from Wizards, and I think it's like a sleep poison, almost like the sleep spell. So if you all continue up the stairs into this like next area beyond that kind of steel door he was kind of blocking, you will come to the top of this tower. When you reach there, you're going to see signs of. I guess it's supposed to have a door shut at the top of the stairs. But for what it's worth, you're going to see kind of signs of like corpses and creatures. This room is like upturned as if all of these creatures have like been running around and stampeding inside of it. There's books, tables, I think there's mushrooms actually kind of growing around. Yeah, the luminescent green comes from like mushrooms and fungus that are kind of growing. And you're gonna see at least some gemstones kind of around some of these corpses. Let me get a perception check from the two of you. I don't think it's going to pass by either of you that one of these corpses is actually humanoid. It is wearing a purple robe, kind of like buried underneath one of the tables. You can see signs of the flesh being um, effectively preserved. So, like, there's bones of these animals, but the actual body of Catavex is going to be rather pristine. Um, I think maybe it makes sense to recognize like points where bones broke. The flesh doesn't actually show signs of bruising, but you can kind of see points where like maybe his skull kind of hit one of the tables, but you kind of pick up different signs. Oh, I was supposed to hide that in a medicine check, but let's just go with the idea that you can see signs that he died in the crash, and it was probably because he was just like almost jostled around like a rag doll inside of this place.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let me get a nature check from the two of you. So you can see among all of these different animals, like none of these skeletal creatures exist today. Um, except for if you go to Chult, because I hate D&D. So I like the idea of saying you can spot, like I'm pretty sure I can see one of those skulls is meant to be like a triceratops kind of thing, but I'm not sure if D&D actually has like the same extinction of dinosaurs. But I'm gonna say basically you can tell the difference between what is it? I think it's the calcium that gets replaced when bones um, get preserved in
Fossilize.
fossilized. Yep. I feel like you can kind of see like these bones are not like calcified; they're actually like replaced by I don't know what it is when they fossilize, but they're effectively rock that is in the shape of those bones. And you can kind of like recognize that little bit of a difference in them.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so Brannick is wondering it's maybe the brain just can't call that this high necromancer is dead, or maybe it's just never come in here because it's too scared. But Brannick kind of definitely kind of his curiosity is piqued by all these kind of like these bones. But I think he would kind of like after looking around there, he would be moving towards the corpse of the robed figure.
So when the two of you step into this room, I think I think you'll see a few gems kind of scattered around the room. Probably the largest of which is an emerald. But once you actually start to like walk into the room to look a little bit closer, I need I think charisma saving throw from. I think he's gonna go for Brennick. Brennick, can you roll a charisma saving throw? All right, excellent. Um, so as soon as you guys start to like move into this room, there's going to be a moment where Brennick kind of pauses for a moment, and then he's going to turn to Fen and very quickly ask, "I, Enchanter Avira, Do you know of what has been her fate?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. Do I know what?
The High Enchanter Avira, her fate. Are you aware? Is she safe?
I don't think anyone survived.
This is most unfortunate. I I need to get to her immediately. Brennick, when you walked into this room, you are going to find yourself inside of a small room with green walls. And you can see out of all of these different walls. And there are many facets to them. You walked into this room, and you have been imprisoned inside of a gem. Your body is walking away after asking Fen a quick question and then starting to move down the stairs.
Brennick's gonna try and, I guess, try and shout to get Fenn's attention.
My bad. So I think I should have said, like, I think he actually does reach out and he's going to grab that gem that you were inside of and you're going to see yourself holding it. Um, and he's going to take another moment. He's just kind of like madly ranting. You inside of the gem, you can yell, but there's no kind of effect. Fenn's going to see as Brennick kind of continues kind of pushing things out of the way, grabbing up this gem, and then he grabs like another gem, and you'll see as he grabs like a diamond, finds another diamond, and after he finds about 4 or 5 of these gems, he's going to kind of turning back over uh, towards Fen. Um, yeah, I think it would still be in common. I feel like he's going to say, I am High Necromancer Kadavix. Your friend is safe for now. I must find my wife. You are welcome to join me, but I must take his body. The High Enchantress is not safe and may still be recoverable.
And if we find the High Priestess, you will return Brennick to his form.
I believe I can return your friend to his form earlier if absolutely necessary. But the High Priestess is most certainly it would be it would be best if I could go directly for her. I roll an insight check here for me, Fen. He doesn't have malicious intentions. You can certainly sense he's concerned. and he's not able to kind of think straight at present. This is essentially somebody who's kind of lost in like um, effectively like ages of torment simply thinking about his wife, and now he's able to do something of it. But he can also kind of sense, and I feel like it would make the most sense for him that he can recognize like Brennick is panicking inside of the gem, which would make a lot of sense for somebody who doesn't understand what's happening.
Picking up on this, I think Fen will say, then do what you must to end your torment. I will await here.
Roll. Oh. Roll a persuasion with advantage for me.
I don't talk too good.
I yeah, if I don't know how to play this out. I'm tempted to call it so I can try to actually imagine how he would react at this moment, and also to make Justin kind of sit through a week of not knowing what's going to happen to his character. Yeah, he's far too nice. As he kind of like finishes grabbing like the last of these gems up from this area, and it's like he keeps kind of like looking towards the stairs and like the way out, and like this idea like of Fen just saying like I'll remain here. And he's just gonna kind of look back to you. No one survived, but I have. Perhaps you've done a great service, even if by accident. And he is going to start casting a spell. And over the next hour, you can watch as he's going to create this ritual. And as he weaves this spell, Justin, from within the gem, you're going to start to see like cracks that start to form along all of the walls of this prison that you're inside of. And as he continues the spell, you'll start to sort of recognize that you were not necessarily imprisoned inside of a place meant to harm you. This is a place for preservation. And when he completes the spell, like his body is going to start to actually, like in this process, kind of like clearing away the things that are on top of his corpse. And you'll start to see his like wounds are like sealed up. You'll hear like his bones almost like crack back together. And there's almost like that grinding moment between as like very tight fitting portions of his skull kind of snap back together. And he's going to, over this next hour, cast a spell of resurrection over himself. When he revives himself, there's going to be a moment where the emerald actually like explodes, and from within, Brennick will basically watch as the emerald like disintegrates, and there's going to be just like almost a singular moment where like Fen might see Brennick almost like go weak in the knees. And that will be kind of like the moment where Brennick, you like watches this crystal explodes and then find yourself back in this weird like moment with yourself. Ooh, we haven't really played around with design in a long time, but I'm tempted to remove design entirely because the gem is not designed for two souls.
Yeah, it almost it kind of adds like Brannick gets trapped inside it. Essentially, like it rips Dazan's consciousness or out. Yeah,
And I'm also tempted for that same reason to have you re-roll all of your hit dice.
sure.
Essentially, in pretty similar ways, you've kind of just died and come back to life in a pretty similar way. So I'm tempted to kind of have that happen here. And I feel like that also would hopefully remove any of the negatives that you kind of gave up to revive Dazan, as his spirit is basically released from you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Brannick is not sure exactly what happened, but it's definitely an experience. So yeah, I can go ahead and roll those.
All about the friends we make along the way.